بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. To explore more the significance of remembrance of Allah and to deepen our understanding of remembrance of Allah, inshallah, today we talk about the link between remembrance of Allah and contemplation, between dhikr and fikr. In the Quran, and in particular in the hadith from Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, we have great emphasis on thinking, on contemplation, on pondering upon anything that can help us in our journey towards God the Almighty. To the extent that Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam said, لا خير في عبادة ليس فيها تفكر. There is no goodness in an act of worship which is empty from contemplation, from thinking. If I do ibadah just in a physical form, I bend, I go to prostrate, but I don't know what I am doing and why I am doing. I don't reflect, I don't contemplate. This is not useful. Of course, on the day of judgment, we may not be punished because we can say, I have performed my duty. The prayer which was compulsory, I have performed. The fasting which was compulsory, I have performed. Okay. But spiritually, this is not uplifting. If you just do it physically with a mind and heart which are absent. Imam Ali says, لا خير في عبادة ليس فيها تفكر. There is no goodness in an ibadah, in an act of worship, if it lacks contemplation. In a famous hadith that you can find it in many books, we have تفكر الساعة أفضل من عبادة السنة. If you think and reflect for an hour or for some time, because at the time of the advent of Islam, in early Islam, I am not sure if sa'a meant 1 hour, 60 minutes. Sa'a means time. If you reflect for some time, or say 1 hour, it's better than worshipping for 1 year. Of course, by comparison, you realize this means a worship which is without tafakkur. When you say tafakkur is better than worshipping with, for 1 year, it means that a worship without tafakkur. Because if you can worship with tafakkur, then you cannot imagine how important it is. In some hadith says, تفكر ساعة أفضل من عبادة 60 سنة. If you reflect, contemplate for some time, for an hour, is better than worshipping Allah for 60 years without knowing what to do and why you are doing this, what is the point. So, tafakkur is very important. And today, inshallah, we want to understand why tafakkur is so important and what is the link between tafakkur and dhikr. Because we said that remembrance of Allah is the only thing which can help us in our journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we said everything which is good must go back to remembrance of Allah. Now we want to see the link between dhikr, remembrance of Allah, and tafakkur or contemplation. Let me reflect with your, inshallah, help on some hadiths which have especially chosen with some care to show the link between tafakkur and dhikr. And these hadiths are very helpful. There is a hadith that in our sources, in our collections of hadith, has been attributed to the Prophet Isa, to Jesus, peace be with him. So our Imams narrate this from Jesus, and also they have said themselves. Tuba liman kana samtuhu fikra wa nadaruhu ibrah wa kalamuhu dhikra wa baka ala khati'atih wa saluma an-nas min yadihi wa lisanih. So the first sentence is Tuba liman kana samtuhu fikra, means the one whose silence is contemplation. وَنَظَرُهُ عِبْرَةٌ, and when he looks, his glance is to take lessons. وَكَلَامُهُ ذِكْرًا, and his speech is remembrance. So the Prophet Isa, peace be with him, says that a person who has achieved these qualities is a person that has achieved great goodness. And you can feel envy for such a person, of course in a positive sense, so that you can become like that. When he is silent, he is thinking. Some people, when they are silent, they are negligent, or they are, for example, just thinking about useless things. A faithful is that when he is silent, he is deep thinking, in the process of deep thinking. And in our hadith, I don't have time to go into details, but if you remember in the previous course on self-building, we talked at least for half a session on the significance of silence and not speaking too much. Because silence by itself is a big help, and speaking too much is a big problem. When we speak too much, even if what we say is not prohibited, is not haram, it's not like telling lies or backbiting, just the fact that you speak too much stops you from moving forward. It makes your heart and mind busy with useless things. And it's a great quality for those people who are able to reduce their talk and conversation to the necessary, to the minimum. This is very important. And you may remember, those who attended that course, this hadith from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in which he said, "Lawla takthirun fi kalamikum wa tamrijun fi qulubikum la sami'tum ma asma' wa la ra'aytum ma ara." Similar to this. If it was not that you speak too much and you let every bad idea to go around and around in your heart, you would be able to see what I see and hear what I hear. So you don't need to become a prophet so that you can see many, many hidden things or hear to many, many hidden voices. The problem is that you speak too much and you let everything come and make your heart busy. Unfortunately, we don't give great attention to our heart. We don't let anyone to come into our house without permission. Anyone to take my car without permission. But anything can come and settle in my heart. Why is it? We must be most careful about our heart and our mind. So, silence by itself is a great quality which is related to our discussion. But I don't have time to explore more. The Prophet Isa says, the one who is silent and his silence is because he is thinking. In another hadith, we have that if you want to know who is a person who is thoughtful, the sign is silence. Dalilul aqil or dalilul tafakkur as-samt. If someone is thinking, so he needs silence. If you see there is a person who is constantly speaking, so it means that he doesn't have any chance, any time for thinking. How can you keep talking? One of my friends was saying that he had a grandfather who used to speak too much. And when he was going, for example, out with his friends, he was not letting anyone to speak. And in order to prevent others to speak, he was never, stopping, because if you stop, then someone may start something. So he was, so he said once he was thirsty and he wanted to drink water and it was by a river. So when he was drinking water, he was, moving his hand to not to let them, have some chance to talk so that he can continue. So some of us like this, we don't let anyone to speak and we want to keep talking. But a mu'min, as Imam Ali alayhi salam says about a brother in faith that he had, kana li fi ma madha akhun fillah. One of the qualities of that brother, Imam Ali says, that was that kana ala an yasma' ahrasa minhu ala an yatakallam. He was much more interested in listening than talking. This is a great quality, that you let people talk and you just listen. Anyway, so in this hadith, the Prophet Isa says, the one who is silent but because he's thinking, and the one who looks around because he wants to take lessons. In everything, there are lessons that we can take. The people who have been successful or the people who have not been successful, in both of them, there are lessons for us to learn. What our friends tell us, or what our enemies tell us, or what the people who have no relation with us tell, everything can have some lesson for us. It just needs your reception, your sensitivity. There are people who can take these lessons easily from everything, and there are people who cannot take lessons even in the most obvious things. They cannot take any lesson. وَكَلَامُهُ ذِكْرًا. And when he speaks, his speech is remembrance for him and for others. A good person, a faithful, is the one that when he speaks, this speaks does not make himself forget God, and also does not make others forget God. This is very important. When I say something, I have to think whether this talk that I am going to make, this speech, this word, is going to help you in remembering Allah, or is going to divert your attention from God. And then he says, وَبَكَى عَلَى خَطِيئَتِهِ, and he cries for his mistakes, for the bad acts that he has had, for whatever bad and impure that he has done, he cries. It is very important to be able to cry. When you cry, it means that it has become very serious for you. And there is nothing like crying. You know, I can easily smile. I am invited to a party, and I don't know those people. That's, for example, a wedding party or birthday, something. I can go and easily smile with them, laugh and smile. But the only time that you can cry for someone is when you are deeply moved and you are very close to that person. Otherwise, you cannot cry for someone. You can smile, but you cannot cry. To be able to cry, you must be deeply affected. I can only cry for my mistakes and for sins if I really regret. So Prophet Jesus says that the one who cries for his shortcomings and for his sins and mistakes, and the final quality is that the people are safe from his hand and his tongue. It means that he doesn't do anything against people. He doesn't say anything against people. So people are safe. They don't think always to be worried whether this person is going to hurt me or not. So here we have silence and contemplation. We have a speech and remembrance. Some people may think that we can understand from this hadith that zikr is only when you talk and contemplation is when you are silent. So when you are silent, you are thinking, contemplating. And when you are talking, you should be invocating and having remembrance. But this is not what this hadith says. And this is not what we understand from other hadiths. No. This doesn't mean that when you are silent and you are contemplating, you are not remembering Allah. Even when you are silent and you are contemplating, you are remembering God. What this hadith is trying to emphasize is that no matter whether you are speaking or not, your heart must be connected to Allah, to God, the Almighty. If you speak, this connection shows itself in the words that you say. If you are silent, this connection shows itself on those memories and ideas which go around in your heart. Okay? A person who is connected to God, when he speaks, the words are the words of remembrance. When he is silent, the thoughts and ideas which are in his heart are all again related to God. This is what this hadith says. There is a hadith from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam addressing Abu Dhar. You know Abu Dhar, one of the famous companions of the Prophet. And he was very truthful and very also frank. The Prophet said, Ya Abu Dhar, إن الله عز وجل يقول إني لست كلام الحكيم أتقبل. O Abu Dhar, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that he does not accept the words of a person who is wise. It means that for Allah, the words are not the main things. The claims that we make, these are not something that is important. If Allah wants to see how good I am, Allah doesn't look at what I am saying. Maybe I'm saying very good things. Allah doesn't just take account of what I'm saying. وَلَكِنْ هَمَّهُ وَحَوَى. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I don't look at what he says. I don't look at his claims or his beautiful and eloquent speech. I look at his desires, the things that he wants. فَإِنْ كَانَ هَمُّهُ وَحَوَى فِي مَا أُحِبُّ وَأَرْضَى. If what he wants and desires in his heart is what I love, what I am pleased with, جَعَلْتُ صَمْتَهُ حَمْدًا لِي. Then I make his silence praise of me. وَذِكْرًا. I make his silence remembrance of me. وَوَقَارًا. And dignity. وَإِلَّمْ يَتَكَلَّمْ. Even if he doesn't say anything. So the words are not that important. Of course, they are important, but not that important. Allah looks into our heart and sees, what do I want? Why I am speaking or not speaking? So there are people who are silent, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards them for this silence as if they have talked, as if they have spoken, because the niyyah, the intention, is very important. There is another hadith from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in this regard. But before I go to the other hadith, I would love to draw your attention to one point which I mentioned in translation, that Allah says, I make his silence praise for me and remembrance. So this is to confirm what I said, that remembrance can be also for silence. It's not that when you are silent you don't remember. Okay, let's go to the other hadith. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, اتخذوا المساجد بيوتا. Adopt the mosques as your house, as your home. If you remember yesterday, I said that when we enter the shrines, we must think that this is house. Do you remember? House is a place for life. House is not a place for just visiting, or a place like a graveyard. When we go and visit imams or the Prophet or holy people, it's not that we are going to a graveyard or cemetery. This is a house. And all the mosques also to be taken as house, because every mosque is a house of God. Why? Because in the mosque, Allah is remembered, God is remembered. If you look carefully in the Quran about the verses about the mosque, you find that mosque is a place for remembrance of God. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَنْ أَظْلَمُ مِمَّنْ مَنَعَ مَسَاجِدَ اللَّهِ أَنْ يُذْكَرَ فِيهَا اسْمُهُ. Who is more unjust than the one who stops people remembering God in the mosques? If someone doesn't let people to enter the mosque or place of worship to remember God, this is an injustice. And sometimes I have to say that sometimes we people who go to mosque, we do this. A moment has gone to mosque to pray and worship and think, and I stop talking to him about business. So I am stopping him from remembering God in the mosque. So this is a zulm. It's not that maybe for example, a tyrant, government doesn't let people to go into the mosque. Or, the pagans in the time of Prophet stop people entering Masjid al-Haram. No, even the people who are inside the mosque, if they stop talking to each other and, making other people, busy from remembrance of Allah, this is also wrong. I don't say that we shouldn't socialize in our mosque, but we have to be careful, especially before and after the time of the prayer. We should let people, have concentration. We keep talking, and then, we say, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. Just before we want to go to ruku, we join the jama'ah. This is not what a mosque is supposed to be. And also one of the things that I feel very sad is that in our mosques and especially in our shrines, we don't observe silence. People want to go and recite ziyarah and reflect and think, and then some people, recite Quran loudly, and then say salawat and make lots of noise, and they think they are attracting reward to themselves. But this is not, I think, something good. Let people, have some time. People are escaping from busy life to go to the shrine or to the mosque to have some silence. But we make lots of noise. Especially the people who recite the Quran or dua. They may love their own voice. But it's not that necessarily everyone has to love their voice. Sometimes it's hurting other people. So we have to be careful. So, اتخذوا المساجد بيوتا. Adopt the mosques as your home. A place for life, not a place for visit. A place in which you go and gain life. وَعَوَّدُوا قُلُوبَكُمْ الرَّأْفَةِ. This is very beautiful. And you don't expect something other than this from the Prophet, who is mercy for all people. Rahmatan lil alamin. He says, make your heart used to love and compassion. You need to help your heart to be used to this, to become a habit that loves everyone. عَوِّدُوا قُلُوبَكُمْ الرَّأْفَةِ. This must become a habit for your heart. وَأَكْثِرُوا مِنَ التَّفَكُّرِ وَالْبُكَاءِ مِنْ خَشْيَةِ اللَّهِ. You must try to have contemplation as much as possible, and to cry out of feeling greatness of God as much as possible. وَكُونُوا فِي الدُّنْيَا أَضْيَافًا. In this world, try to be like guests. In the mosque, feel at home. But in the world, feel that you are a guest. What does it mean? It means that don't be too much attached to this world. Your real house is, inshallah, heaven. And mosques are heavenly places on the earth. Shrines are heavenly places on the earth. So when you go there, no problem, feel at home. But when you come out, you shouldn't become too much used to this dunya. You are here for a short time. Be guest. What does it mean? We should reflect on the concept of guest. I mentioned few things, but there are some more things that once I mentioned in Birmingham about the months of Ramadan. I cannot speak about all of that. But here, just I mentioned few points. To be a guest, first of all, means that you must know that you are not going to remain here forever. No matter how good is your host, there is a limit. You can remain there for a few days or few weeks or few months, but you cannot remain there forever. A guest knows that he is there for a short time. And second, a guest would not take shortcomings or, difficulties very seriously. For example, if you go somewhere as a guest, and then you see that the kitchen is not comfortable. You don't say, because I'm here for a few days, you must change the kitchen or the washroom or bathroom, or washroom is upstairs, please bring the washroom here. Because, you are a guest. I don't like these curtains, please remove these curtains. This carpet is not very comfortable, please change this carpet. No, you know that you are a guest. A guest doesn't think that much about these things. But if you think that you are going to be there permanently, then you start planning and planning and planning. We had a good experience when we were studying here in UK. So as a students, we were very comfortable. Although the house that we had here compared to the house that we have home is much more humble. But we were very comfortable. It didn't matter to us, But when we go back home, then we start planning and, maybe this is a small house, maybe it's not good, the area, this and that. Lots of things come to the mind because we don't take it as a place for short residence or short stay. So a guest knows that this is not important. I am going to be here for some time and I have to benefit maximally from this. Also, a guest always feels that he must enjoy and he's not that much responsible. This is also another beautiful aspect of being a guest. A guest receives things without being obliged to do something in return. Yeah? When a guest comes to your house, you don't say, you must pay for your stay here. Or you must, come and help me in cooking. Of course, it is good for that person to come, but you don't expect this from that person. When we are in this dunya as guests, it means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is our host. And He is giving us all the blessings without expecting any return from us. So enjoy your time here. Don't become too much, disturbed or too much, upset about the problems. Just enjoy your time here as much as you are here. And also there are other aspects of guest. وَأَكْثَرُوا مِنَ الذِّكْرِ. And try to remember God as much as possible. So you see, the Prophet said, أَكْثَرُوا مِنَ التَّفَكُّرِ. At the end he says, أَكْثَرُوا مِنَ الذِّكْرِ. Try to think and contemplate as much as possible. Try to remember God as much as possible. So it's now becoming clear that tafakkur and dhikr are connected. There is a famous hadith from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, and this hadith is known as Junudul Aql wal Jahl. And some ulama like Imam Khomeini have commentary on this hadith. Imam Khomeini has a book explaining this hadith. This hadith introduces to us two armies or two groups of soldiers. The army of Aql, which is the army of intellect and understanding, and the opposite army is the army of Jahl, which is lack of wisdom and ignorance. So these are not two armies of two countries or, two, for example, I don't know, two parties or whatever. No. These are two armies that every human being has to be very careful to see whether in him there are soldiers of the army of Aql and intellect or the soldiers of the army of ignorance. So Imam then gives a list of each member of this army and its counterpart. One of the things that Imam alayhi salam mentions is that one member of the army or one soldier of the army of aql is tafakkur, contemplation. And the counterpart in the army of ignorance is sahv, negligence. You know sajda sahv in the prayer? If, for example, without intention you speak, or, for example, you fail to do some of the wajibat, which are mentioned in fiqh, then you have to do sajda sahv. Sahv means you do something without attention, without intention. This is sahv. So tafakkur is opposite to sahv. Sahv means negligence. Okay. If tafakkur is opposite to sahv, and sahv is opposite to attention, so tafakkur and attention become the same. So tafakkur is remembrance. Tafakkur is not to be negligent, not to be forgetful, to know what you are doing. This is tafakkur. There is a hadith from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. And these hadiths are very beautiful. خلق الله القلب طاهرا صافيا. Allah has made heart pure and clean. You remember when we said when we are born by God-given light, every human being. So when heart is created, it is created pure and clean. So every person, every human being has been given this heart by birth. وَجَعَلَ غَذَاءَهُ. The food of heart. What is the food of heart? الذكر والفكر. If you want to keep your heart in the state of purity, if you want to keep it safe and sound, you must feed your heart by al-dhikr, remembrance of God, wal-fikr, contemplation. Let us now reflect with the help of these hadiths on this ayah from the Quran, Surah Al-Imran. If you could look at Surah Al-Imran, please. There is a famous ayah starting from 190 going on for several verses. إن في خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف الليل والنهار لآيات لأولي الألباب. Truly, verily, in the creation of the skies and earth, and in coming of the night and day, there are signs for those who think. Those who think. Who are these people who think? الذين يذكرون الله. Those who remember God. قياما, when they are standing. قعودا وقعودا, when they are sitting. وعلى جنوبهم, when they are lying on their sides. ويتفكرون في خلق السماوات والأرض. And they think about the creation of skies and heaven. They reflect, they contemplate. ربنا ما خلقت هذا باطلا. Our Lord, you have not created this in vain, without purpose. فقنا سبحانك فقنا عذاب النار. May you be glorified. Please save us from the punishment of hell. Look, Allah says these people remember Him. in all circumstances. الَّذِينَ يَذْكُرُونَ اللَّهَ قِيَامًا وَقُعُودًا وَعَلَى جُنُوبِهِمْ. And then he says, وَيَتَفَكَّرُونَ. So what does it mean? It means remembrance of God includes tafakkur. يَذْكُرُونَ اللَّهَ قِيَامًا وَقُعُودًا وَعَلَى جُنُوبِهِمْ وَيَتَفَكَّرُونَ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ. So when you are doing tafakkur, when you are contemplating, thinking about, for example, the creation of the world, about yourself, about your life, about what you are supposed to do, something that helps you in your journey towards God, all is considered as zikr. Tafakkur is a type of dhikr, which is very important. But it is not separate from dhikr. So this supports the idea that we have had in all these sessions, that the core is remembrance of God. And anything good comes from remembrance of God. So dhikr is something which is the core, and tafakkur is included in dhikr. You may ask me, is it possible to remember God without tafakkur? This is a very important question you may ask me. I say yes. Tafakkur has a definition in logic and has a definition in dictionary, a literal meaning. In logic, tafakkur means to start from those truths that you know, a movement towards those things that you don't know, so that you make them known. So for example, if you are familiar with logic, we have, for example, deduction. In deduction, we have two premises, minor and major. We put them together to make a conclusion. This coming and going between what you don't know and what you know to make what you don't know known by the help of what you know, this is called tafakkur. Harakatul zihn, the movement of mind from what you want to prove towards what you know and then going back to prove them. This is called tafakkur. So it's a movement between the propositions that we know and those that we don't know to come to the conclusion. Some people, when they have come to discussion about tafakkur in Islam, they have used the same definition. And I don't think this is what is meant here. I think tafakkur has movement, but not necessarily to prove something or to come to know something that you don't know. Tafakkur means with your mind you go around something and look at it from different angles and perspectives. Sometimes to prove it, sometimes you already know it, but you want to further explore it. This is my humble view. If you don't accept, it's your right not to accept. But this is my humble view, and I am very much convinced. If we take it in the logical sense, tafakkur is only for argument, for arguing that something which is not known to be known. But in this case, then can you say the Prophet was doing tafakkur? He didn't have anything unknown so that he needs to think and think and think and then... Can we say Imam Ali was in need of tafakkur? No. He didn't have tafakkur in this logical sense. But still he had tafakkur. How can he say, La khayra fi ibadatin, there is no good in worship without tafakkur? So they had tafakkur. But their tafakkur was not in the logical sense that necessarily you have something unknown and you want to discover it. No. Tafakkur means you have some matter, some subject in your mind, you pay attention to it, and you go around from different perspective and aspect. You want to shed light on that so that you know it more or you can relate to it more. When in this ayah from Surah Al-Imran, يَتَفَكَّرُونَ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, they reflect on the creation of the skies. What does it mean? Does it mean that they don't know who has created this? Or they know? Or does it mean that up to that moment they didn't know that it was created for a purpose and just at that time they remember? The people who constantly remember God, they don't know that this was created for a purpose? Certainly they know. But there is a difference between knowing something and doing contemplation on that so that it becomes firm and well established in your heart. I know that, for example, smoking is harmful. I know that. But if I think about it and reflect on that, then I can gain some more energy, some more determination to stop smoking. It doesn't increase my knowledge, but it may increase my commitment. You are trying to, for example, think about your akhirah, about your life in akhirah. Does it necessarily mean that you have some unknown questions or unknown things in your mind? No. You try to focus on this issue and look at it from different perspective and relate it to your life, to yourself. So tafakkur is not necessarily to be taken in the logical sense. Anyway, remembrance of Allah means, as we said, to pay attention again to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with faith or with love, or at least with openness towards the truth, with a search for truth. This is remembrance of Allah. And tafakkur is a type of remembrance of Allah in which you let your mind be engaged in a type of movement around the subject, which may be Allah or something which relates to our relation with Allah, like our life in akhirah, like our prayer, like, for example, what should I do with my children, with my family. All can come under tafakkur. So tafakkur is not separate from dhikr. There is a beautiful hadith again, which I think is very clear for my position. Al-mu'minu da'imu dhikr wa kathiru al-fikr. Mu'min constantly remembers God and frequently thinks and contemplates. Da'imu dhikr wa kathirul fikr. If you can constantly remember Allah and then at the same time frequently think, so it means that think is part of remembrance. If they are different, so you cannot do something constantly and another thing which is different in most of the time. Imam Ali alayhi salam said, "Dawamu dhikr yuniru al-qalba wal-fikr." If you constantly remember Allah, it enlightens your heart and your thinking. So the main thing is remembrance of Allah, the remembrance of God, which is not to learn something new, which is not to pay attention to something for the first time. No, remembrance of Allah is to refresh your attention to Allah. You refresh your love and desire for Allah. This is remembrance. Something which is built in your heart, but you want to refresh it. You want to make it active. Something that your heart is starving for. This is food of your heart. Your heart is starving for this. And if you don't feed your heart with this, your heart will not have sukoon. You know, if someone is hungry and you don't give that person food, that person would be in very difficult situation and pain and becomes weaker and may die. We need to give real food to our heart. And that is remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is helped by silence. Silence is very helpful. If we can have some time during the day or night, just being silent and think. We must pay great attention, and I'm saying this to myself. I know you do this. I'm saying myself. I must give great attention to our daily prayers, because daily prayers are the best way of remembrance of Allah, which is designed by Allah Himself. You cannot find any form of remembrance better than prayer. These 5 times prayer are very important. I wish I was able, and I hope you would be able, to organize my daily life based on these daily prayers. Unfortunately, we treat our prayers as a troublemaker. You know, I am working, I am studying, then, like someone gives a call which is not in the right time. I have to get rid of that and then continue. We don't think that my life must be based on these daily prayers, and anything else should be given a second chance to engage me. If there is any troublemaker, it's not prayer, it's other things. These are the times that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has guaranteed for us an encounter with Him. He says, if you come at this time, I am there waiting for you. But this is something that we don't appreciate. Sometimes people, make years of efforts to be able to see a king or a queen or president or whatever. Maybe after years they cannot see. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has Himself offered us this opportunity. And says 5 times a day, these are guaranteed. Of course, if you appreciate this, I can extend it for you. I can be with you throughout the day and night. But at least these 5 are guaranteed to see whether you appreciate or not. I always have been desiring this, but I have to be honest, I was not successful. That I can make my daily life in Qom in the way that the hour before prayer, I could keep it empty, so that I can be relaxed, get ready, and for example, to go somewhere for prayer and be relaxed. But unfortunately, up to the last minute, I have to work, and even sometimes, problems, we have to delay. This is what I have to be honest. So don't think that when I'm saying this, I am myself, practicing. But this is at least my desire. But alhamdulillah, you are practicing. This is what we have to, inshallah, do. Organize our life on these daily prayers, which are very helpful. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was in the constant state of remembrance of God. But still, his condition was not the same. The peak for him was when he was standing praying to God. When it was getting near to the time of prayer, the Prophet was looking to the sky and waiting for the time of prayer to come. And when it was the time, then he was telling Bilal, Arihna ya Bilal. Bilal, recite azan, call for the prayer. By this, you would bring raha, you would bring comfort to us. He didn't say azan. Azan means say azan, recite azan. He didn't say call for prayer. He said arihna, means bring comfort, bring tranquility. Like someone who is very hungry and says, please bring the food. I cannot take it any longer. This was the example of the Prophet for Salat. He was feeling hungry for Salat. He said, قُرَّةُ عَيْنِي الصَّلَاةِ. The apple of my eyes, or I don't know what you say it in English. You say apple of my eyes or coolness of my eyes is Salat. So inshallah, if we appreciate these daily prayers, and then in addition to that, if we can remember Allah as much as possible, and inshallah, as I said, if we can have such an understanding of our daily practices and daily performance that we can convert and transform everything into remembrance of Allah. Not just physical or specific worships. Anything, as we said, can be transformed into remembrance of Allah. Studying, business, walking, driving, cooking, washing, all can be transformed into remembrance of Allah if we do it for the sake of Allah. But what can give us this magical power to transform everything? It's the power that you need, this alchemy. In the past they had this chemia that they said, if you put a little bit of it on some, for example, metal, it becomes gold. What is this powerful means that can transform everything into remembrance of Allah? This is your determination. This is your irada. This is your determination. This is your will. If you want, you can do it. إن أفضل زاد الراحل إليك عزم إرادة يختارك بها. Very beautiful. The best provision that a wayfarer towards God can ever have, the best provision, is a determination by which you choose God. If you have this willpower, then you have this power of transforming everything into your service, into the service of your journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah inshallah give us this determination, this understanding that we don't choose anything other than Him, and may Allah inshallah make our heart full of love for Himself and for His people inshallah. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillah rabbil alamin. So inshallah, if you could have your discussion, before, I think we can have 20-25 minutes inshallah. Yesterday lecture, the one in the morning, about different types of dhikr and the definition of dhikr and the ayat about the houses in which you can find light. This was unfortunately was not recorded properly. So we are going to repeat it 5 o'clock today, 5 to 6. So if anyone missed the lecture yesterday morning, can come at 5 to listen. Or if you want to refresh yourself. But there was a sister who asked me for handout for another person. Ah, for you.